It wasn't recording?
It wasn't recording. I just looked up like, oh shit, it's still paused. It's recording now, so go ahead.
So
what was your question, Paul?
Well, I was asking where Denny was stationed at, because I was stationed in Kaneohe.
Kaneohe, it had to be somewhere around there. All right. But, you know, what his wife didn't know, and I had to tell her, and his daughter was, his ship was in Vietnam. They never got off the ship, but they were there. Yeah. What year were you there? You look too young.
I'm old enough. I'm old enough. I was in between 91 and 95.
Oh, Christ. I told you were young. I'm talking 63 to 66.
Yeah, I wasn't around then.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, what about you? I know you've got a heck of a Denny Griffin story here.
Well, yeah. The way that I met Denny was when I found out that there was a book out there that on page 130 told me who killed my father. So what I did was I reached out to the publisher of that book because my father's murder was unsolved. It was a cold case. At this point in time, this is like 27 years later after my father was killed. And the book, of course, was Frank Collada's book, Collada. And so I reached out to the publicist, I think it was Huntington Press, a guy named Len Sipkins, I believe. Anyway, I reached out to him. They put me in connection with the PR guy, which was Len Sipkins. And I told him, like, hey, in your book, you got my father's murder. It's on page 130. I gave him some background details that weren't in the book. And so he said, well, I'll go ahead and I'll reach out to Denny. And when he said Denny, I was like, okay, I got the right guy. And so he sent out an email. And just like Orlando was saying, I think that I sent an email and like 2.5 hours later, I got an email back from Denny. And so we acknowledged each other that, you know, yeah, this does seem to be like your father in the book. Why don't we catch up on the phone next week? And I said, that sounds really good. And then the following day, he dropped an email to me. He said, hey, look, I talked to Frank Collada. I talked to Dennis Arnoldi, who was the FBI debriefer for Frank Collada. And if you would like some help getting Larry Newman named as the killer of your father, we would like to help you. So I was, of course, elated by this, you know, that a stranger would touch me in a way like this, something so important that he knew instinctively what to say to me. Hey, do you want to get your father's case solved? And from there, that really kicked off my relationship with Denny, and we were good friends ever since. And, you know, for that first year, we really campaigned to get Larry Newman named as the killer of my father. And Denny was there the whole time, every inch of the way. He championed this situation as much as if it was his own father. So I have immense appreciation for Denny, and I'm really heartbroken by his loss.
Yeah, I can imagine. Hey, Ori. Now you spent your life on the wrong side of the law, and Denny spent his life on the right side of the law. Now,
Right.
When you guys hooked back up, you knew each other as young men, and touched base every once in a while, things like in the military. Now, how did that go when you guys touched base again after these two disparate, totally separate lives?
There was really no problem, you know. I mean, you know, the fact was, same age, we went to school together, we had the memories from Hawaii. Actually, when Dennis got out of the Navy, he began selling insurance for Bankers Life. He sold for a short period of time. He didn't like it. And he went on to the sheriff's department. It was in Monroe County, I believe. And after the insurance business, I became what I became. But, you know.
For you guys that don't know, Ori came up with this insurance scheme. He's the inventor of the extended warranty which is not really a warranty, it's an insurance policy.
You know, I'll tell you a funny thing happened today. They just booked me for the National Auto Dealers Association next March in Las Vegas.
Cool.
I just made a deal on the price, expenses, and everything for next March. So I'm quite excited about that because I am the guy, I'm the pioneer in that business. I'm the guy that when you go to a car dealer and buy a car, and you know, it's not really a salesman, it's a demo. It's a demo, the guy that's showing you the car, and then they turn you over. Finance manager, business manager, they got all sorts of names. And then it's the after show. Only $2 more a month, only $4 more a month. And it's gonna sound like nothing to you. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm the guy responsible for that.
Those of you that don't really know, when I practiced law, that was I fell in with some consumer protection lawyers, and they would give me their smaller cases. And these kinds of the back end sales where they pressure people into buying things that they didn't really want to buy, and that kind of thing were in my bailiwick. So that's why I find it really interesting. I told my friend Dale, who kind of has been doing that stuff for 40 years here in Kansas City, I said, I met the guy that invented the extended warranty insurance policy. So Denny was, when you first hooked up with him to write the book, I mean, you had already started on your book. Am I understanding that right? You'd already started on your book?
Yeah, I was over a third of the way through with it. Yeah.
And he helped you what did he do?
Then it formatted it, edited it.
Cool. Was that what publishing company was he with then? He was with that Blue.
We put that with Wild Blue Press.
Wild Blue Press, yeah.
And I was so reluctant to sign that contract, and Dennis was just beginning with him. But I figured that Dennis had the contract signed, had it checked out. And after the book was published, because they promised me it was going to be bookstores, it's going to be this, and I went to Barnes and Noble over here to set up a book signing, and they look up my book and they said, sorry, your book is a print on demand. I said, what the hell is that? And I found out what it was.
Yeah.
And then I found out everything else they told me was a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
And they really were not a publishing company. They were a self-publishing company.
Yeah.
And so eventually I got out of that contract, and I studied the publishing business, became well-versed, and now I own half of Coastal West Publishing. We have a company in Canada, and we have one here in Los Angeles. And so far this year, we got over 20 books coming out. So,
cool. Now, was Denny, was his last book he co-wrote with somebody that he went and did that with Coastal West?
we did the last Colada book with David Bowman.
Oh, yeah.
And right. Dennis. Okay. And then another one, Sergeant.
Oh, yeah.
Sergeant, I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I can't either.
And we have one more that's going to be coming out. But Dennis's next book, we convinced him he was going to write it. It was going to be called Griff. It was going to be Dennis's life story.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Unfortunately, we never got that there.
That would be an interesting book.
Yeah, that would be.
Because Denny's such a humble guy that, he's so busy telling everybody else's story and helping everybody else. And, but he's like the pivot point in all this. He's interacting with all these different people and whatnot. Very interesting people, wide range of people, from mobsters to victims and everybody in between that. And boy, I really wish that book would have been written. That would be
let me tell you how humble Dennis was. And I never realized just how humble he was. Even with his own family, they knew very little, because I was on the phone with him constantly upon his death. All right, I'm the one. I spoke to Jeff Shoemaker. I had them write a nice article for the Mob Museum. I talked to the Las Vegas Review Journal countless times. They wrote a beautiful obituary for Dennis. And I mean, I'm talking to his kids, and they didn't know anything about his father. And I knew more about Denny. Denny was just a humble guy, and he just, after the sheriff's department, he found a love for writing, and he did it well.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And we, as a publishing company, we're going to give his wife everything on the books,
Okay, good.
even our profits.
Yeah. A little known story he told me, I asked him about when I was doing my movie. I said, what do you think about, you think I'd have a chance at getting Oscar Goodman? He said, well, let me tell you a story about interviewing Oscar Goodman. He was the mayor when Denny was writing his book. He said, I called his office and they said, yeah, come on in and here's an appointment time. He said, then I sat out in the office for about 2 hours, or the outer room of the office for about two and a half hours. He said, finally, he said, I just left. And I'm done with Oscar Goodman. I don't need Oscar Goodman. Denny did this first mob summit in Las Vegas. And he got me, I had known him by then. I had my movie done by then. And so he asked me to come out and do it. And of course, so we're doing it on a budget. That stuff is, as Larry Henry knows, that stuff, to do those kinds of conventions are, you got to put out so much money, and then you got to have some kind of an advertising budget or something to let people know that it's out there. And then you got to get the right people. You got to be able to get the criminals. The cops are not really that popular at those things. It's the criminals. And that first year, Denny was able to get this Andrew DiDonato, who was a former Gambino soldier, as kind of a counselor. I lost the name of his book. I just looked it up. But he got him to come out. He told some great stories. And Frank Calabrese Jr. came out. He told some great stories, and they had several other mob guys out there. And Denny was right in the thick of all of them. I was kind of standoffish. I was kind of new in this game. And so I didn't really buddy up to any of them. I probably should have, but I don't know. There was just something about it. I just couldn't do it. I just could not do it because these guys were, Frank Calabrese Jr., he's a real deal. I mean, he was a killer. And DiDonato was certainly capable of it. He was certainly a professional criminal all of his life. Up to that point, I don't think he's anything since. But boy, Denny was all over him, and they loved Denny. And he did one the second year. He and this what was this other guy's name? He was a magician, and then that guy died. That kind of
Robert Allen.
Robert Allen, yeah. He was a magician out there in Las Vegas, and knew about promoting stuff. And he told me he broke even the first year, and then the second year they didn't really. They didn't want me to come back particularly until at the last minute. Then he got hold of me and he said, we got to run short here. Somebody's finked out. Could you come out? And I said, I'll come out because it was you'd get a hotel room paid for, and that was it. Otherwise, all on your own dime to do this. But I went out and sat on a little panel and did a couple of things with that the second year. But it's tough. Larry, did you ever talk to him when you did your mob summit? Did you?
Not then, but I talked to Denny. Oh, sorry, Gary. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's all right. Go ahead. I was asking you what your.
Not doing that, but it's really funny because writing for the Mob Museum and for Casino.org, I've talked to Denny a couple of times for stories I've done, and he, like Ori and Paul and you were saying, such a generous guy, such a helpful. One of the stories I wrote, I quoted Denny in, and he was super nice about it, and responded to what I quoted him on, and just a really nice guy. That Las Vegas Mafia history page, he would comment on that page from time to time, and was always complimentary about what other people were doing. And that book that Ori's referencing, I think was it Sergeant Rust or
Sergeant Rust. That's the name of that book.
Sergeant Rust, yeah.
He
one time he said, you and Ori and Paul are talking about how gracious he was. And, one time he sent me a private message and he said, listen, I've got a new book coming out. It's not really about the Las Vegas mob, but would you mind if I posted some excerpts on that Facebook group. And I said, gosh, Denny, anything you got, man, you didn't have to ask me that. You know, you don't need permission to do that. But he was just, you know, yeah, just a super nice guy, you know, and really, you know, somebody on that page today said something about the Golden Steer and whether Spilatro had been there and all of that stuff. And I, you know, I responded politely. This came from Denny Griffin, and I trust Denny's reporting. And it's like Ori was just saying, I mean, Denny was a really, really good reporter. I mean, he, as Ori was saying, you know, he didn't put anything out that he didn't check. You could take his facts to the bank.
Yeah.
He was, everything was so accurate in Denny's books. And in addition to being a really strong writer, you know, some people are ballerinas when they write and some people are bulldozers. And Denny kind of was between the two. And his fact checking was so solid. His books are so strong factually.
And that's a lot to say about true crime books or mob books in particular. It's hard to get those things as right as he was able to.
You know, one of the books that we were going to do, and I connected, this woman found me on Facebook and started writing me. Martha, she killed her husband in Las Vegas. They say she did a lot of time in prison. Martha, what's her name, Jeff?
I know you're talking about, I'm drawing a blank. I think Glenn Pruitt wrote about her, I think. Yeah, she killed her husband. It's popping back up, right, Ori? It's back in the news
Martha's
right here. I'm drawing a blank.
She finally got out of prison. She lives in Chicago. So I told her I could help her, but she doesn't own nothing. I said, you got to write a book. If you write a book, you'll own that. I hooked her up with Dennis. She loved him. They were going back and forth. Dennis was excited. He was speaking with a lawyer. And you know, Dennis does his work. And then all of a sudden, she flaked out.
Yeah.
She met some guy and says, oh, now you're getting screwed. You're getting screwed. Well, she really got screwed because she's not got nothing going. But the book is going to be completed with a lawyer. Anyways, so we're going from the other aspect of her story, from the lawyer who represented her on that there.
Great story.
Yeah, more than one way to skin a cat, ain't there? You know, another thing that's little known about Denny, and he roped me into this to help some other people out, is it's a cold case review project. And there's some lady, Jen Payton, I think's her last name. And so I'll get he put me on their list of assets. And so I'll get an email and a case file attached to it, or some cold case that some relative has gone to them and asked them to take another look at this. Because most police departments don't have a cold case. You know, you always hear about these cold case squads. I know we don't in Kansas City. They had one for a while, but last few years, everybody's, you know, manpower crunch and so much more going on with active cases. There's nobody left working cold cases, and so I get these things every once in a while, and they'll ask me since I'm a lawyer, they'll ask me some legal question on how to do something maybe, and I didn't really practice criminal law, but I can at least do a little research and give them some. So I always preface it with, this is not really a legal opinion, and I'm not licensed to practice in that state you're talking about, but here's the deal as I see it. And he was active with those people with that. So he was all over the place.
Well, and I know I'm sort of off topic a little bit, and I've said this before, Gary, you know, you have created a community of mob historians and documentarians and journalists and so forth around you, including things like this tonight. And, you know, that's kind of what Denny did. You know, in a lot of professions, people will get jealous and they'll have sharp elbows. They'll think, you know, hey, I'm not going to help this guy. And, you know, we've all been there in different fields.
I felt those sharp elbows.
We've all been, but, you know, to be in a universe like this, where everybody is so helpful, and, you know, everything rises and falls from the top. And Denny was somebody who sort of created that culture of helpfulness and people cooperating. And I'll turn you on to this person, you turn me on to that person. Gary, you helped me the other day with that Lucchese family member contact information for a piece I did for the museum, Panisi. And you know, you do the same thing, Gary. You've created, you are what Denny was. I mean,
I try
well, you do. I mean, you
and every time, you know, Larry, it's funny you'd say that. Every time I like get asked a question, sometimes I'll get this little twinge of like some other podcast, like, well, I don't know what's to, and I think, well, you know, Denny Griffin, what would he do?
What would Denny do?
Yeah, what would Denny do? You know,
well, you do the same thing. Ron Fino. I mean, you and Ron and people like that, and everybody in this group, you know, just such a helpful group. You know, you just don't feel that sense of I'm going to cut this guy out because he could be a competitor. And people like you and Denny set that culture, and that's really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely pushed me in that same direction. I mean, when you look at my circumstance with like Kim and Frank, how do I pay these men back? You know, there's just no way.
Yeah.
And I knew that early on. You know, while they were helping me, I'm like, I'm never going to be able to pay these guys back. So the only thing that I thought that I could do is just be a good person going forward. And, you know, and make myself available anytime somebody does need help, you know, like Larry was saying. And you know, and a lot of it's my personality, but it's really modeled after Denny, you know, how do I make sure that I'm, you know, aimable and available to go ahead and help out folks. And I certainly have, you know, but that was my only way to go ahead and repay back, you know, Denny for everything that he's done. I mean, he's done so much for me. I mean, he helped me name Larry Newman as the killer of my father. When I asked him to help me write my book, he wasn't available, but he got me my co-author. And then when the book was ready, whose show did I go on first? It was Denny. What did Denny do? Oh, he surprised me by having Frank on. And it was just, it overwhelms me what that one person did for me.
Yeah, that's, you know, what people don't know is that's what Dennis, that was his biggest love, cold case files. Did you know that?
No, I didn't really realize that. I knew he was really into it, but I didn't really
Dennis is very big into
talk
cold
about it at all. He just said, hey, would you help these people out? And he kind of told me a little bit about what it was. And I said, yeah, I'll give him my email and I'll be happy to help them out. Although I tell you what, some of those files, the first one I got, God, I probably, to really go into it, I would probably have to spend 8 hours just looking at stuff and making notes and make some kind of an educated opinion. Now, since then, it hadn't been quite so egregious, right? So work intense. That first one was a lot of stuff in there.
I think I was able to, you know, to do what I was set out to do, because not that long ago, I got a call from Denny, and he was working with a production company, and they wanted to get a hold of one of the Hole in the Wall gang members, and Denny was having a hard time finding them. And so he called me and he asked me if I could find them. And I did. I was able to. And I was just so happy that just that one little thing that I could give back to Denny. I'm like, here you go. Here's where he's at, you know. And so I think I did come full circle around that. And, you know, at least Denny called me and asked for help, and I was able to help him. And that meant a lot to me that I was able to do that. It was very small, and, you know, certainly in comparison to what he's done for me. But it made my day knowing that he came to me to help.
Cool. You know, I'm thinking back to that first Mob Fest thing that he was instrumental in. I think maybe he didn't even make any money on that. It seemed like that Robert Allen guy probably, it was really all his show, but Denny went around and bird dogged all the guests that he had. I'm pretty sure he bird dogged all the guests, because that guy didn't really know anybody, and Denny knew everybody and continued to know people.
Wasn't Dennis going to do another one of those? Jeff, was he going to do another one, I thought?
I don't know. Larry did. See,
I'm not
Larry,
sure.
Larry did one. He helped do one, or he did it really
Yeah,
out in Las
yeah.
Vegas about 2 years, 3, 4 years
Yeah, I
ago
think the
now.
pandemic kind of, dampened a lot of
Yeah,
that. I'm not sure Denny was
Ori,
gonna
I'm
do
not
something.
sure.
Go ahead, Gary, sorry.
I can't remember. Because Larry did one there, and then you and the guy from the Gangster Museum
About 3 years ago, yeah.
did one, and then
Yeah.
I don't know. We're going to talk about doing one in Kansas City. Never could get it together. I don't know.
Well,
I'm
then the
not very good
pandemic
at that kind
hit
of
and-
stuff. Then
yeah.
the pandemic hit. I don't know. Maybe we'll try it again here in Kansas City. We always have that Mafia Film Festival in
You've
the
got
fall,
the film festival coming up,
in
yeah.
November.
Let me,
But,
can I ask a question? I'm just curious. I don't mean to take it in sort of a different track, but Denny's, and Ori mentioned that he was, working on a autobiography, Griff. Fascinating life. What took Denny from New York, where he was a deputy sheriff and so forth? What took him to Las Vegas in the first place? I mean, he really planted the flag in Las Vegas, and through strong, solid reporting, really established himself in Las Vegas. Does anybody know what actually took Denny to Las Vegas in the first place? Because he had written a book. Didn't he write a book about the Las Vegas Police Department first, right?
Right. That's how he got started. He wrote that's exactly what it was. He wrote that book about the Las Vegas Police Department. I think that's when he started making connections out there. Then he did the one on the battle for Las Vegas, and I think maybe it's where he met Culotta, was during that time.
Yeah,
Because
when he's doing the battle, he was put in contact with Dennis Arnoldy.
Right, the agent.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And now it makes sense, right? How battle then came after that. So once he got connected with Dennis, Dennis was kind of vetting Denny to Frank, and Dennis was working with him on his book, and then Frank agreed to meet Denny, and then subsequently they went ahead and they wrote Frank's book, but he got to know Frank doing the battle for Las Vegas.
Okay, that makes sense, because he hooked me up with that Dennis Arnoldy first of all, and then but told me about the other two, and then Dennis Arnoldy and vouched for me with Dennis, and Arnoldy then hooked me up with the other two agents I actually used. Dennis Arnoldy was kind of funny. He said, "I always said you got plenty besides me. You don't need me to be in your movie." I don't know why. He was camera shy. He did several like sit down kind of news things with he and Frank Culotta before we started doing all this stuff. There was Dennis Arnoldy and Frank Culotta being interviewed on some kind of a show out there in Las Vegas.
That was Robert Allen.
Was it Robert Allen?
Yeah,
I didn't remember. Small world. So and then I got a hold of Frank when I was getting ready to trying to sign people up. Now Frank Culotta was not so generous. I got Arnoldy got in touch with him and then gave him my number. And one day I got this phone call from this gruff Chicago voice, and so I tell him who I am and what I'm trying to do, and he said, "Well," he said, "I'm going to have to be paid." And of course, he'd already been spoiled by the guys in Casino. And I said, "I give you $500." He said, "Man," he said, "that won't even get me into Las Vegas." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry. That's about as much as I'd be willing to spend. I probably should have spent a little more money, but they were giving me $5,000 just to sit down and talk to them for a couple hours. So, it's hard to compete with that. He wasn't living in Vegas at the time. He was still laying low at the time. He was, I don't know where he was living. I think he was out there around Las Vegas somewhere, but he was laying
Frank?
low at the time. Frank, yeah.
Frank was not living good.
Yeah.
He was not-
Before he started getting famous and popular again?
Yeah, he was not living good.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Frank, he had no money.
He must have blown through that casino money right away, which makes sense.
Yeah, I think
How
he might
much
have been.
was he?
party
Oh,
a
sorry,
little bit.
sorry, Paul.
Oh, go ahead, Larry.
No, I was just going to ask. Didn't mean to cut you off, Paul. I was just going to ask what Frank's deal was, because he was getting a monthly check, right, from the government, in addition to what he got from the casino movie folks. So what was he doing, Ori? Was he just burning through money on
He had no money, no car, no nothing. Adam Flowers, who did the show with Colada,
Yeah.
all right, was telling me the story. He wasn't really making money until he started doing those tours. That's when he started making money and he was able to get an apartment. Yeah, Frank was very, very bad off.
I'll be damned.
And I don't know, maybe he gambled. I don't know,
Yeah, you know.
I don't know about any checks or anything like that, but I do know that when he was in the witness protection program, that he was here in Grapevine, Texas, Gary, which is
He was. Oh, really?
not too far from your son's house.
Yeah, my son, they play. That's his golf club. It's a Grapevine Golf Club. Well, it's a public course, but that's what he calls his club.
You know what else Denny did well? And Gary, you told me this when I put that piece together the other day. You know, a lot of people when they write take a side, pro cop side, pro mobster side, you know, and don't try to get the facts from both sides to present a full picture. And one of the things I really admired about Denny as a writer and a reporter, I didn't know him personally like you guys did, but you know, everything I saw and what you guys are saying, just a fantastic guy. But what I really admired about his books, he got everybody to talk to him. And you told me this, Gary, he got the bad guys, the good guys. Now who the bad guys and the good guys are, I guess, is up for grabs. But I mean, he got cops to talk to him. He got FBI guys to talk to him. He got mobsters to talk to him, not in a judgmental way. He just wanted the facts. What happened? He wasn't going into it from a judgmental perspective. And that came through in his books. I mean, they're just very factual. They're not loaded with, you know, bias and opinion in the language he uses. I think that's what made him such a really good storyteller. He got people to talk to him from all perspectives and then presented the facts in a way that made a compelling story happen. To me, that's what that was one of Denny's real strengths. And you can see why he got everybody to talk to him, because he was such a, you know, engaging guy.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was gracious. He was engaging. He was jovial. He was just a lot of fun to be around. I mean, for a guy that kept his story, his life to himself, he was a lot of fun to be around. You know, he liked to smile. He liked to laugh. And he was just easy and fun to be around. And I think everybody picked up on that. And, you know, and to Larry's point, I mean, if you look at books 2 and 3, which was the cop Las Vegas book and then the gangster book, that it reads like one big book, one from the good guy and one from the bad guy side, you know.
I noticed that he was able to, I was looking back at his book, and I noticed that he was able to get this Las Vegas police officer, I think he was a lieutenant by then, named Gene Smith, who won't talk to anybody. I'd love to talk to him. He's one of the 2 guys that killed that Frankie Bluestein that night. I don't know which one, or maybe both of them dropped the hammer on Frankie Blue. But
Bluestein.
Bluestein, yeah, not Bluestein, not Herbie Bluestein, Frankie Bluestein. That's the one the 2 coppers killed after they were sitting out and watching, doing a surveillance on Colada and Spilotro at the upper crust. And this guy pulls up in a Lincoln with Illinois tags, and they don't know him, which is what intelligence people do. You sit out a place like that and watch the people you know, and then somebody pulls up that you don't know and you're interested in, you would try to see who they were. And so they followed him away, and then he ended up pulling over, and he jumped out, and he had a gun, and they shot him and killed him. There's a big deal about it. And I'd love to interview Gene Smith or his partner, or both of them, Dave Grubner, for the podcast, but they won't talk to anybody. I make one run at it, but they did talk to Denny. I know.
Are they in Las Vegas, Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna mention David Grover. He was another character that he's not really an open book. I mean, he hated Larry Newman, and he did want to share a couple things with me, but he would only do it like via email. And you know, and so that you had any kind of communication with a gentleman like that says a lot about, you know, who Denny was as person.
Was he involved in your dad's investigation, Paul? And that, or he was just involved in the hole in the wall stuff?
All those guys in Vegas were just dealing with the hole in the wall stuff. You know, from their perspective, see, my mom gets really upset when she thinks about everything back then, just because, you know, this happened. My dad was murdered by Larry Newman, and it fell through the cracks. And you know, from the perspective of all those guys, they had one of the slickest gangsters, Tony Spilotro, that nobody could get a beat on. And so, you know, it became very important for them to go ahead and get anything on Tony Spilotro in particular and the Hole in the Wall gang. So those guys, they knew about my father. Sheriff, not Nigrin, Hendel. Sheriff Hendel.
Oh, okay. Up in McHenry County.
Right. When Hendel would go out there, or when the DA would go out there, I forgot what their names were, what his name was, but they would talk to Las Vegas and be like, yeah, you know, we got Ron Scharff's case on deck, you know, and they obviously weren't going to tell him that we were, you know, going to send that off and, you know, forget about that, take care of the mob back in Chicago. But I believe that they thought that the ball was rolling. An intelligence officer out in Vegas, I want to say Peterson or something like that. He had a conversation with Hendel, and there was an article in Las Vegas about a conversation with one of the mob's attorneys and Hendel, and saying that the guy that they were looking at failed lie detector tests, you know, but they, you know, left out that they gave him 3 lie detector tests. One said that he did it, one said that he didn't do it, and the other one was inconclusive. And he thought that when he was talking to Hendel that he was coming around to the idea that Larry Newman did kill my father. But that was just kind of keep everybody at bay.
Yeah. So what some of these guys may not know, Paul, is, see, Frank Collada was going to be the witness to pin this his father's murder on Larry Newman, who was a bad dude. But the outfit, these guys were a little bit corrupt up there in McHenry County, and the outfit did not want Frank Collada to be seen as a good witness anywhere. See, once he testifies in these situations, once a guy testifies and you get a conviction off his testimony, then he's pretty good somewhere else. And so they did not want this to go forward. They didn't want to take the chance, and the outfit put pressure on him to not go ahead and charge Larry Newman, and he was still alive at the time, I believe, and they could have charged him with the murder, and it would depended on Frank Collada's statement. And if he got a conviction, then hey, he's a good witness, and the outfit wanted to discredit him all they could. So they fought it, and this district attorney and sheriff, they just put it on the back burner. Paul had to go up and rattle their cages to go in order to get anything done. He rattled the cages so bad he got the old sheriff voted out, and the new sheriff voted in. And I don't know what about the prosecutor, but I think that whole thing changed in McHenry County.
Well, because Paul's courage. I mean, Paul, it takes a lot of courage to take on an entrenched good old boy system of corrupt politicians and judges and prosecutors, and they came after Paul, and that just took a hell of a lot of courage to take on an entrenched power base like that. Congratulations, Paul.
Well, thank you, Larry. And and again, this goes back to Denny, right? You know, because
these other gentlemen we have here haven't talked. We got a few other people haven't said a word here.
Well, anybody wants to ask a question, jump in there. All right.
Just soaking it all in.
Go ahead, David.
No, I'm just soaking it all in.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. So where were we? I forgot where we were.
When Paul was talking about the help he got from Denny and approaching that entrenched power base up there.
Yeah. So, when me and Denny were going at it, we were just going at it. You know, what we were doing was just making noise, try to bring as much attention to what was going on. And so you can say that, I got my sea legs with Denny, because my story is broken down into two campaigns. The first campaign, named Larry Newman, is to kill my father. And then the second campaign I did by myself, and that was to get rid of the investigator, or the Undersheriff Sankey, who was running for sheriff, get rid of him and get a different sheriff put in. And so I was super effective on that second campaign, only because me and Denny had our first campaign, and we created all the infrastructure that I used to go up against the guys in my second campaign. And it was a well-oiled machine because we did well the first time out.
Yeah.
I owe that guy the world.
So Ori, I think some of these guys may not know that much about you, about your later in life kind of thing, when you were in Hollywood. Why don't you tell them a little bit about that?
Well, I've been coming back and forth. I've been out here for over 40 years. I'm known as the Hollywood Fixer. I began with Dino De Laurentiis, 1971. They were filming a movie. The actor was giving the director a hard time. It was going behind budget, and Dino and Ralph were in the office over here on Cannon Drive, pulling their hair out. They didn't know what to do. I said, I'll go handle it. I went over, I grabbed the actor, I sat him down, and I handled it with no problem. I made her understand. And from there, word just spread out. I started getting calls from agents, lawyers, and other people handling problems. And then before you know it, my association of over 40 years with Sonny Franchise. And Sonny and the rest of the guys back in New York they call me their guy in Hollywood. And people come out here, and I made introductions, helped different people out with different situations. And that's how he became known out here. And eventually, in 2008, I got arrested in my home in Beverly Hills on RICO charges and put on Con Air and brought to Brooklyn. This is the FBI promised they would do in 1997. 11 years later, they kept their promise. And all soon will be told, and a movie that's being made right now.
Oh, cool.
So
Great.
it is being done.
Are you going to follow? Are you working on a follow up to your book, Ori? Are you working on a follow up to your current book?
I'm going to be writing a couple more books. The Los Angeles Tribune is made me a bestseller. The Los Angeles Tribune magazine is coming out in July. From Accidental Gangster to Humanitarian. I've been putting a lot of my efforts in helping young men stay out of a life of crime, as well as I'm helping other people in prison reform and other areas. And I'm getting heavily involved in the political arena, what's going on in Congress, with the illegal, unconstitutional bills. A lot of things that I'm really doing. I feel good about what I'm doing. I'm happy. And as I tell everybody every time, my life was my destiny. I own it, good, bad, or ugly. But I take full responsibility. And I think everything led me up to what I'm doing today. I'd like to share something with you. I don't know, Jeff, if you remember. I can't remember if I said it in my book. Well, when I was living in New York City, and I go upstate on weekends to visit my mother and my children. My mother, before I left the house one day, my uncle lived with her, and he read a lot of books. And he used to like to read gangster books. And my mother goes, just like a mother. Mothers know. A mother's got that instinct. And she comes downstairs and she's got these books. And she says, here, I know these people are your friends. And she gave me a few books. One was Frank Costello. I don't know where that book is, but I was going through stuff the other day. And look at this book, Lucky Luciano,
Oh, is that the Last Testament?
1969. Look at the pages.
Wow.
You see how yellow they are?
Yeah.
75 cents. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's funny. I found that. I don't know how. I mean, I had it buried with some photos that my family sends me through the years or whatever. But I thought it was kind of funny. But, you know, going back to Dennis, you know, my fondest times were those times with him in Hawaii, I gotta be honest. You know, I remember he was one of the guys that got thrown out of school with us for drinking at a junior high Valentine's Day dance. But, you know, it's like from when I got out of the service, he got out of the service, there was no more connection. And until I wrote my book. And he's definitely going to be missed. Because Dennis had a lot more books in him, a lot more.
Yeah, there's a lot more stories out there, and he was always there to help people tell their stories. That's for sure.
Yeah, his wife was telling me he got up a couple times from bed and walked with his walker to sit down he really wanted to do it. You know, but one thing I'm happy about is he went fast and he wasn't in a lot of pain. You know, I mean, I'm sorry that he's gone, but as we get old, this is what happens to us.
Yeah.
It's going to come to everybody, but at least he didn't suffer long. And I think that's a good thing. And yeah, he's going to be a missed man.
Yeah, he will be. All right, guys. Anybody else got anything to say? Been here about an hour now.
I didn't know Denny, but I was certainly familiar with him. This has really been interesting, very enlightening.
Thanks,
Thank you all
David.
sharing stories. It really was interesting.
Yeah, we're, you know, in some ways we're all here because of Denny Griffin in many
Yeah.
ways.
I wouldn't have known you or Jeff
Right.
for Denny.
Absolutely, 100%.
True. Okay, I think that'll do it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, everybody. See
Gary,
you guys
thanks.
later.
Good night, all.
All right, take care, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Take care. We'll see you all.
See you.
Bye-bye.